One, two.
This is waiting to be written.
I just ain't waiting. Oh, here.
And where it says test at one,
Check. No. Oh, why does it say waiting? Refresh it. Oh no, I don't think we're gonna do a test. I think we're gonna go straight in if you can hear me. Uh oh, got something. All right, greetings to those that are in the chat. Cobb, thank you for unmuting yourself. Cobb, Cobb, I know who you are. Thank you for unmuting yourself. Copper Chopper Style, greetings. EJ Copper, Tony. Copper Indio, Copper Indio, greetings. All right. I normally don't do this, but I've been compelled to do this today. Man, it has been crazy today. Uh, too many times Indians have taken an L with two individuals with Rawborn, aka Wrongborn, and Danny, the true historian, aka Danny the lie historian. I've noticed that those two will not send any correspondence to A2 or the Cab Grand Rising show. They keep going up against certain individuals who said they were not listening to A2, and they never listen to A2. But they're bringing half heard information that was previously discussed on the Cab Grand Rising show in detail. Most of you, if not all of you, know what I'm talking about. You heard the fiasco earlier. When I'm going to use their, I'm not even going to, I'm going to use their proper names. I'm going to say what they want to be called: Rawborn and Danny the True Story from NBK. These two individuals are out of New York. And so their perception of the world is based upon those five boroughs. They gave out false information, misleading information, and just flat out lies. I don't know any other way to put it. Now, I would like to know from them, this is me, in a healthy discussion on a neutral platform. And I'm not trying to convince them that they are not Africans. They are whatever they say they are. I'm going to call them what they are. But when you go out of your way to say that individuals that were brought to New York, not as slaves, but they were brought to New York as indentured servants. Now, I hate to go back and have to start all over, but let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to kindergarten, shall we? There is a huge difference between a slave and an indentured servant. An indentured servant is one that they came over and needed to pay off the cost of the voyage. More times than not, they were compensated either with currency, some type of currency, gold exchange, some type of bullion exchange, or they were given land after they worked off their debt, which was usually 5 to 7 years. You work the land, then the land is yours. Real simple. So when individuals try to change the narrative and want to put a red line, and most of you know what I'm talking about if you've ever done an essay in the English, your English teacher or professor goes through your stuff and they just red line and mark everything. They want to red line Negro and write in all caps African. Now the problem with that is that Negro is used interchangeably for several different groups. And I'll give you examples. Outside of Africa, the Aborigines of Australia and New Zealand, Pacific Islands, have been labeled as Negro. Those in Arabia have been labeled as Negro. Give you an example of Esteban, who was a scout and a translator for, I believe it was DeSoto. And he's Esteban, the Negro. You'll see him Esteban, the Blackamoor, and Esteban, the Arabian. And then you have what we know as the Indian, the American Indian. All labeled as Negro outside of the continent of Africa. In the words of my brother No Sellout, it's all about the timelines. Now, how could you be confused when it comes to the timelines? They made a claim. When I say they, Danny the True Historian and Rawborn are making a claim that 11 Africans came by here through the Dutch, or should I say, the cargo company known as the Dutch West African / West Indian, and we'll get into that dealing with India. This cargo company. First thing that was very deceptive was a visual deception that he gives you the colors of their flag of being blue, white, and orange. You can look this up for yourself. The colors are red, white, and blue. He tried to give you the visual and say it was orange, and the New York Knicks, the color, these schools with the color, the New York State bird had the blue and the orange. Their colors were not that. It was red, white, and blue. So that's the first line of deception, was the deception of sight, the sleight of hand. He goes on to say that here are 11 individuals that he listed. And I'm going to post this video after this. I'm going to show you the video. And I'll pause it and I'll put the helpers down there at the ticker at the bottom. That he states he's 11, and they all had Portuguese names. So I'm trying to figure out how could this Dutch cargo company go to Africa and get 11 African slaves, and every single one of them had a Portuguese name. Now, what he didn't tell you was at the time, the Dutch and the Portuguese were at war. See, he leaves that out. He leaves that out. So how is this Dutch trading company able to go down to Africa, get these Africans from the area that we know as Angola and Ghana and all in that area today? How is that even possible? Someone help me out, because I really want to know. I really want to know. So that's the second deception of when you try to paint this broad brush and don't know anything or give any reference to timelines. It is very critical of timelines. He even tried to state later on another broadcast, another program, that the Dutch and the Germans were not the same people. I believe that on Cab, the Grand Rising Show, that was discussed in depth, that the Germans and the Dutch are the same. They are one and the same. As a matter of fact, I lived 2 years over in Germany, and they didn't call it Germany. They called it Deutschland. Deutschland. And their currency at the time was called the Deutsche Mark. So you're meaning to tell me that they don't know they're one and the same? Same people. Now, let's talk about the wars that were going on. They never break down the wars. There were two sets of wars that these Dutch were involved in. Like I say, no matter how you call it, they're the wood shoe wearing Dutch. You can call them Belgian, you can call them Netherlands, Sweden, whatever you want to call them, whatever name you want to give them. They're all the same people. They had a tariff slapped on them by those of the Iberian Peninsula, which would be your Portuguese and your Spanish. They were not allowed to go to certain areas because the Iberians said no. So that killed them getting out of Europe from the south. Well, let's talk about getting out of Europe from the north. The English had a tariff for any ship that came within a 30-mile radius of the islands known today, or the lands known today as Great Britain. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. Now, let's get into, he's talking about Angola. Angola. He leaves out that Angolans are Portuguese. If we'll go back and deal with Angola, and we'll also deal with Guinea as well, these names or these terms didn't come about until after the Ottoman Empire conceded the peninsula known as Iberia. Portugal, and Spain. The people that were misnomered as Moors, a derogatory term, left. Well, where did they go? The majority of them went into Africa from Europe. After, again, the Ottoman Empire, and I'm taking this slow for a reason, because I know those that are listening and playing the telephone game and say they don't listen are really listening anyway. So I'm gonna give them an opportunity and I'm gonna slow it down. Like I tell y'all sometimes, hit that switch and it slows down where you can get it to 0.25. So after they left, some, as we know, settled in what we know as Northwest Africa, and some went into what we know as South Africa. But there was also a group that was already there, along with the Dutch, that came from Europe, that tell you they are not Africans. They were brought to Africa. Botswana, Namibia. They say they were brought to Africa. Africa is not their place of origin. But we'll talk about that maybe at a later date. So now we're into all of these Dutch, or we know them better as these Huguenots, that were already there, that called themselves Afrikaners, Afrikaans, with a K and two A's. But it still means the same thing, still African. They are already there. So here come the Portuguese, and you can look this up for yourself. I put a clip on there before dealing with South America, but we're going to touch on that in about 4 or 5 minutes. That these were those misnomered Moors, and you can be a Moor without being a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian. That's just what they label them due to their skin tone. Some people try to interchange Muslim with Moor, and that's not the case. Now when you have blonde hair and blue eye Moors, so that doesn't work. I mean blonde hair and blue eye Muslims, so that doesn't work. So the Portuguese, the ones that were still there, underneath Ferdinand and Isabella, which still paid homage to the German Empire, because kings, and this is the hierarchy, kings report to the emperor. If you're a king, you are a representative of the empire. So the Portuguese were making babies, the same thing that they did in South America, with these groups. So now you have a mixture of people, or a new group of people, that are declaring themselves as Angolans. And these are the ones that also became the captains of the ships on these voyages, the scouts, the interpreters, that were able to speak the language. Now, I'm going to give this gentleman who said that he doesn't listen to Cab Grand Rising Show, but he was trying to explain Ladino and fell short. Ladino, as we know it, would be Latin. When they say Latin is a dead language, when people are still speaking it, or in other circles of historians of academia, they would call it Paleo Hebrew. Now, I'm not saying this for any type of dealing with religion. I'm saying that when Pan-Africanists say Hebrews never existed, explain to me how the language got all over the world. Uh-oh. So an imaginary people that never existed came up with a language that is spoken all over the world. They sit there and say, oh, well, there were no words. Because on the other show that just ended a few hours ago, and I apologize for being late, I won't keep you all too long, was saying that it was Ladino, but couldn't explain why. People were putting sources in the chat, but he didn't bother to read the chat. So Danny, the historian, and I'm gonna be back. Danny, the truth historian, and Rob Orn walked away with another W on somebody's home turf. The visitors came in and took another W away. When words, I could give you several words that have literally traveled all over the world. We talked about it before. Uli. Uli, we know Uli is dealing with the Olmec. Uli, you will find in the language of the Vikings, the Nordic languages, Scandinavia, as Ulla. U-L-L-A. It gets translated into what we know as the portion of Latin, which is from the Italian word. The Latin word gets back to Julie or Huli, Julie, where you get Julia or Julius Caesar, meaning the same thing. I mentioned it before. It was not an accident that the colonizers, and I mean by the colonizers, I mean the colonies, why they chose July the 4th, 1776 as the date for independence. It gets back to the Uli. And I could go on and on and on to discuss tobacco, Maya, Guinea. Oh, that leads me to Guinea. Now, we're in trouble. I don't know why this thing is like blocking some of the messages, and I apologize. Some of you all are admins. I don't think you know it. But let's just look at some of this going on with this. Let's look at this. Let's look at some of this information that was stumbled upon with Guinea. And when they sit here and say that Guinea has nothing to do with the Guineas that are over there or African Guinea. So let's talk about that for a moment. If you all don't mind, just bear with me. Let me go ahead. It was just so much information, so much nuggets I was just taking away from all of this stuff that was being said. Now, let's look at the history of Guinea, shall we? They go on and they say that the first inhabitants of the region that is now Equatorial Guinea are believed to have been pygmies, of whom only isolated pockets remain in northern Rio Muni. The Bantu migrations between the 17th and 19th centuries. Now we're going to get to where the rubber meets the road. 17th and 19th centuries. That leads you to the 1600s and 1800s. And they go on and talk about the Igbo of Nigeria. But here's where the rubber meets the road. It talks about the Portuguese explorer Fernando de Po Po, P-O, with long O, Po, was seeking a path to India. He said it is accredited to being the first European to discover the island of Biko in 1472. He called it Formosa, meaning beautiful. So Guinea, the original name for Guinea, was not Guinea. It was Formosa, meaning beautiful. And he says that it was colonized by Portugal in 1474. Now, here comes the problem. Because you know how they skip, just like they were skipping over here in the Americas. They skip. And they go on and talk about from 1827 to 1843, the United Kingdom had a base in Biko to combat the slave trade, which was then moved to Sierra Leone. Upon agreement with Spain in 1843, and then it says in 1844, on restoration of Spanish sovereignty, it became known as Territorios Español del Golfo de Guinea. They didn't get the name Guinea until 1844. The people in the Caribbean and all throughout the Americas were already using the term Guinea. We talked about that before on Cab Grand Rising Show. Guinea was already used by the Indians of this hemisphere. I'm going to say that again. 1844 was the first time that that portion of land in West Africa was called Guinea. Somebody's in trouble. And it says Spain had neglected to occupy the large area in the Bight of Biafra, to which it had treaty rights, and the French had been expanding their occupation at the expense of the area claimed by Spain. So now we're in trouble. Because I already told you the first time that it was called Guinea was 1844. So again, who are these people that when they are taking these DNA tests, talking about they're from Guinea? And you also get Guinea from the word Ghana. So who are these people from Guinea? And who are these people from Ghana? And ask yourself, who are they testing? But I already posted a video that 80% of these DNA test participants are from the Americas. So I'm put it this way, are from North America. Specifically, they are United States citizens or United States individuals that live in a continental United States. 80%. So how are they getting their samples? Who are they getting their samples from? And then Danny, the truth historian, and Rob Bowen, who didn't say too much, were going on and saying, well, what about these other languages? Well, how did the languages get over there? And what did they do? And I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are 5 elements. 5. This is academia, since they brag on how intelligent they are. There are 5 elements to a civilization. Without this, there is no civilization. And I'll post this a little bit later as well. But remember this. Record this. Type it. Keep it. Play it slow. 5 key elements. 1, a centralized government. And you will find out the more research you're doing on these West African countries today, they had no centralized government. None. You'll keep reading, oh, the origins unknown. Origins unknown. We don't know about these people. We don't know where they came from. We don't know who they are. So we just name them whatever. 2, this is going to mess up some linear atheists. An organized religion. Organized religion. The predominant forms of religion, when I say religion, I'm not talking about Jesus on the cross. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about specifically religion, and not in the sense of, oh, they made us. No, spirituality. You're going to find Islam, and we know that Islam didn't start in Africa. It came to Africa by way of those that we call Arab today, through the Ottoman Empire. So Islam, this is West Africa. I'm not even talking about Northeast Africa. I'm talking about West Africa. Islam, Christianity, and voodoo. Hold up, stop, wait a minute, pause. How are these West Africans practicing voodoo, vodun, hoodoo? And the majority of, I say all of, the spices and herbs and animals that they use are from the Americas. So now we've talked about no centralized government in West Africa that the people came up with, because someone's going to say Mali, and Mali again are still dealing with your Iberians, aka your Arabs that came dealing with the Ottoman Empire. So don't come to me talking about Mali. Don't come to me talking about Mauritania. Don't come to me talking about Morocco, because they were not originally from there. They brought with an R, B-R, brought that to Africa. And the reason why today, those countries, they speak Spanish and they speak French. The majority of these West African nations speak Spanish or French with the Dutch overtone. But we'll get back to that Dutch overtone in just a moment. I'm going to be done in about 10 minutes. The third element, key element of civilization, is job specialization and social classes. What jobs did, and this is no, I'm not meaning any harm, what jobs did West Africans have? What specialized skills did they have? Were there any farmers? Were there any architects? Were there any engineers? Were there any scientists? Were there any philosophers? Were there any educators? Because when I checked, it was the Europeans building these fortresses. And they wasn't building them to hold slaves. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. Again, those cannons are facing out to sea. They're not facing inland. So this port of no return, and everybody's crying, oh, I just feel it. I feel it. Well, you can go ahead and you can be Whitney Houston and you can be Mariah Carey, and you can get so emotional and get caught up in all these emotions. It's still not going to make it to truth. That port of no return was not the port of no return for Africans being shipped over here to the Americas with the cannons facing outward. But again, we'll talk about that at a later time. So I'm just asking, what was built in West Africa at that time? Nothing. What was the organized religion or spirituality at that time? And you have Pan-Africanists keep talking about voodoo, but voodoo started over here in the Americas. It did not start in West Africa. Its origins are here in IT. So again, we're to number 3, and we still haven't found anything yet. Here's what's really going to get good. I already said this. Arts, architecture, and infrastructure. What were the arts? The West African art with all these masks and all this stuff, you don't see any of that until after interaction with the Portuguese. You don't see it. They didn't have it. They wasn't building anything. And infrastructure. They still don't have infrastructure. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to break it down on how Indians had all these things. And the last thing, and Garfield, a.k.a. Barfield A. Greed, admitted this. Finally, West Africans had no written script. We already tackled that it was the Dutch that came up with the Zulu, Bantu, and all the rest of that. The Dutch. That is why when you listen to West African languages, you're going to hear something, whether they speak in French or Spanish, it is with a Dutch undertone. It is harsh. When they speak, it is very, very harsh. The Dutch wrote their script. I already had that on one of the videos on one of my channels showing that. So when you get an opportunity, just in your spare time, you can check it out. The Dutch wrote down their script, gave them their language. Whereas all the stuff written down, no written script. So we've gone through 5 elements of a civilization according to academia. I'm sorry. It is what it is. We do know Indians over here had a centralized government. We proved that with the tribes to the south, that the kings or the chiefs or the Sekas came and paid tribute to Uli or the Alabama. Centralized government. We broke down in Mesoamerica, the Yucatan, that they had these district states. Same thing in South America. So North, Central, and South America, there was a centralized government. There were district states. Sorry, West Africa didn't have that. Not prior to the European. Organized religion. You'll always hear me say Kukulkan was here long before. And there were several others. I can get at the Tuklok. I can do that at a later date. We can talk about Tuklok and his gold grill with his gold fangs like the Wu-Tang Clan and his bug eyes and his dark skin. We can get into that at a later date. But there was organized religion here. Get the plume serpent. You're going to find out dealing with, you know him as Quetzalcoatl. We call him Kukulkan. Long before the Europeans. Popol Vuh, long before the Europeans. The Chilam Balaam, long before the Europeans. And this is a script, which I skipped one, but that's a script because it was written down. That's why when the Spaniards said, oh, there was no script, but then you read about the Spaniards bragging about how they burned down all the scripts, all the libraries. They're bragging about it. Again, how can you burn something that never existed? You don't hear about them burning down any African libraries. No West African libraries. They had Northwest African libraries. They had Northeast African libraries, but they didn't have it. They didn't have it in South Africa. They didn't have it in West Africa. And again, don't give me Mali, because we already know that Mali people were Arabs. It is what it is. Job specialization in social classes. I already talked about that even earlier, dealing with the Natchez. The Natchez were your Army Corps of Engineers. We know that the Itza was the Navy. We know that my clan, the Rabbit clan, we were the medics. We know that the Appaloosa were the horse breeders. Man, I can go on and on. These are specialized skills that each tribe, each clan had a specialty. We know the Sapat, the Sabotek, they were the priests, but they also made the shoes. So now, that's just off the top of my head. That's just off the top of the dome. I've given you several special jobs, special skills. As you know, when you fill out your resume, they say, what special skills do you have? If you don't have the piece of paper or a special skill, a trade that they call now, that they took out of the public schools and making you pay to get these trades now, building trades, auto trades, there were special trades that we had over here in the Americas. We already talked about Breckenridge when he talked about, these people that they said that were not civilized and that it was the new world. We're coming to find out this was the old world, and it was older than the Romans and the Greeks and everyone else that they're referring to. And also, he throw in there, older than the Egyptians. So these were already specialty things. Then we get into arts and agriculture and infrastructure. I already talked about that before with the roadways, how everything was already laid when they started to pull away the brush in what we call Mesoamerica and South America. They had roadways that was structured. There were lanes. There were fortified cities that you just read about over here with the Natchez, that they took 7 cannons and they still couldn't penetrate the fort. Fort Sumter was built by Indians. That's why it never failed during the Civil War. It never failed. It never changed sides. And you got to think how much they were bombarding it and they still never failed. Come on, son. Writing. I talked about that before. The Spaniards talk about how much they took down the writing. Even the Mormons talk about how they found the gold plates. And the gold plate was chiseled in Paleo-Hebrew, a.k.a. Ladino. That's what my main man, they got choked up today and let them serve you. Just say, hey, the Mormons. And people can laugh and say the Mormons are crazy, but they knew something because they got their own state. They got their own land. So they must not have been too crazy. And they control State Farm. Jake was State Farm. Insurance company State Farm. Mormons. Company formerly known as Kodak. So y'all didn't know that? Mormons. Ancestry.com to know about your genealogy. Mormons. 80 to 95% of the websites that we use for genealogy owned by Mormons. So now we are getting to where the rubber meets the road. And I don't know why it keeps blocking you all messages in the chat, and I apologize. And someone's going to need to explain to me about the Catawba Saponi, not the Catawba Sioux, the Catawba Saponi, Itza, in the Virginia and the Carolina areas. Their number one religion is Mormonism. Hmm. Well now. Hmm. Well. Who do you think taught the Mormons? Y'all better think about it. Chisel and gold on gold plates that none of the Yiddish Jewish priests could read until one looked at it and said, "Oh, this is Paleo Hebrew, aka Ladino." And you will find Ladino being spoken in Greece to this day. You will find Ladino being spoken in Italy to this day. Portugal, Spain, France, the southern parts of Germany. I can go on and on and on. And again, all of those people that are below the Mason-Dixie line, going all the way to the tip of South America. Micmac teaching the language. This is what I said when Danny, the historian, and Rob, well, why did they learn that? They never talk about the Vikings coming to the Americas. And that the Vikings came and they took the bog iron that they used for their swords, their axes, their spears, and their body armor that was impenetrable for those that were using copper and bronze and gold and stone. This is part of what made the Vikings invincible, because they got the iron from here. Also, to the other guy that says he doesn't listen to Cobb, if he would have just thrown out the longhouses, all you had to do was throw out the longhouse and you would have won. Matter of fact, in the South, we still call them shotgun houses. My grandmother had a shotgun house where literally you look at the front door and you can look all the way to the back door and it evens out. Shotgun houses. Those are long houses. The Vikings didn't start living in long houses until after they came over here to the Americas. And we tease again, they smoked themselves out like bacon because they didn't have enough windows, didn't have enough chimneys to get the smoke out of there when they were trying to keep warm. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So anyway, back to our regular scheduled program. Now I'm going to wrap this up in 2 minutes or less. I just want to get the highlights, and perhaps I'll come back on again, but maybe tomorrow or Sunday, to come back on again. I'm literally going to dissect the presentation that Danny, the true historian, gave, where he said, oh, sources. He never gave you sources. And you'll notice in the video clip, he'll say something about Aruba. But I know, again, those that listen to Cab, Grand Rising Show, you're the greatest chat in the cosmos. And you know Aruba, he'll say Aruba, yada, yada, yada. And he won't read the rest of it. Now, anybody in their right mind would say, wait a minute, Aruba is where? And if you don't know, you would at least Google it. Aruba is over here in the Americas. Hot giblets. So how are they talking about, these people from this Dutch Western trade company, cargo company, that he tried to give you the wrong colors? How are they, or why are they in Aruba? And why are they on the list of names that he gave? One is telling you he's from South America. So you're going to tell me they shipped this guy, one of the 11, from South America over to West Africa, then back to North America? We give people way too much credit if we're going to think that. I got some land in Southeast Louisiana to sell to you. Prime real estate, swamp land. See what you can do with that. And they get here and 11, and he tells you 11. Listen to his presentation, because he was uninterrupted. He didn't have anyone in the chat saying anything to him. He says, out of this 11, and they built the fort. They're in New York. 11 people built a fort, and one of them is a child. Look at the list of names that he gave. And then he says, it has no mention of any African slaves building this fort. We need to change that. That lets you know where he stands. These are the people that are pushing to rename these places African this, African that. They will never name that. Never name that. And I wish, and I say, I know Brother Copper Indio is still here. Talk to Brother Copper Indio about the Tuscarora. Go talk to ODB from the Wu-Tang Clan's family about who they are. Because he's throwing at Rikers, and then he said, well, Rikers, where they get Rikers Island from, and there was the Negro house that was right next to Rikers Island. See, he tried to interchange Negro with African. And then he said these Negroes were growing, farming fruits and vegetables and tobacco. Now, why weren't West Africans growing all these things? Perhaps because those fruits and vegetables and tobacco weren't there. They were from the Americas. So you're going to get people that didn't build forts over there to come over here and build you a fort. Then you're going to have people that don't know anything about cultivating, farming, or any of that to come over here and start farming, and then Rikers and these Negro houses get into it. Tobacco? Come on, son. We can't, and this is the 1600s that he's talking about. He kept saying 1625 or 1626, but I had these names, but they don't know what year it was. Come on, man. These are Portuguese names. Angolans are Portuguese. Please don't believe me. Please do the research, and if you come up with something different, email me. Email me. Send me a message after this. They are Portuguese through and through. That's why they try to give you, these 20 and odd Negroes, 20 and odd Africans. Come on, son. This is the game that they keep playing. Even I said we're in the digital age, they keep changing these books to say African American. African slaves. Never said that. These things never, ever said that. I'll give you I'll end with this. Bill William Goins. He is buried here in Texas. They had on his tombstone on a plaque, former slave. We contacted the Texas Historical Society and told them change that. He was never a slave. They had to put beside the plaque that he was a former slave and put on there, he was never a slave. Look him up. William Bill Goins. You can spell it Goyens or Goins. Never a slave. So they keep trying to make the center of the world New York. And we all know that everybody merged upon New York, and they were still battling. Check out the movie Gangs of New York. New York wasn't organized like that. Do not let these guys continue to fool you and keep it to the 5 boroughs. They don't travel anywhere. They say, I went here, I went there. They can never tell you where they went. I can tell you where I went. I've been to London, England. I've been all over Germany. I was stationed in Aschaffenburg, which is outside of Frankfurt, Germany. I've been to Berlin. I've been to Prague. I've been to Barcelona. I've been to Paris, France. I keep going on and on. I've been to Kuwait. I've been to Egypt. I've been all over Mesoamerica. I've been all over the States. And I wasn't going just as a tourist. I was spending time there. So I can name all these places that I've been to. And they tell you, I've been somewhere. And then when you ask them, who are your family? Who's showing your family that's African? Oh, we know we African. But they never give you genealogy, but then they tell you to take a DNA test. They never break down their genealogy. Oh, can you go back to your great grandmother? Dude, I can go back 10. At least 10. At least 10. So now we're in trouble. You never hear them ask them to give you a breakdown of their genealogy. Where in Africa did they come from? No one sitting here saying we came. They always say we came from kings and queens, kings and queens. Everybody couldn't have been a king or a queen because who were the servants? They had to serve somebody. Come on, son. Everybody can't be the boss. Somebody's got to be the employee. So who was the employee if everybody's a boss? That's what this modern day rap society, again, everybody's a boss. Do not let these Pan-Africanists continue to steal those W's. Because Indians, Aborigines, Indigenous, whatever you want to call yourself, because although some of y'all don't care for me, and I don't particularly care for y'all, but if you're trying to represent us as a whole and you keep taking those L's, we all take the L. And now we have run out of L's, and now they're using upside down sevens to represent the L's that we keep taking. Stop the madness. So I am putting it out. They probably won't, because they already know. You ask Rawborn, you ask Danny, you ask Garfield. They all know who I am. I haven't gone to try to be like, oh, I want to get these views and get my name up there. Ask the RBG mosquito skin producer, got his people in a sweat factory in Malaysia making those shoes. The Big Baller brand, a.k.a. the Zion Williamson blowout shoes, Uncle Cat. They know who I am. We've had these discussions before, and I have sent them documentation on who my family is. That's why they won't talk to me. They keep talking to individuals that listen to Cab, Grand Rising Show, and claim that they don't listen to. But I see you, and I hear you quoting because you're going back trying to find the videos and trying to find the talking points. Stop getting served. I'm telling you, we've had enough of being Wayne's crew of getting served. Come on, man. You are getting served like a short order cook. Stop getting served. Just admit it. Hey, why don't you come over here and talk to some people? And I don't know everything. I'll tell you that right now. But I guarantee you, if they have a discussion with anybody that's on the Cab Grand Rising Show chat, I guarantee you, y'all can run circles around them. Anybody, you will eat their lunch. Let's stop playing. And when they talk about Guinea, like I said, I haven't dropped it yet with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. They got it backwards. Because they're getting it backwards because they couldn't say certain things. Just like Breckenridge, he couldn't say certain things. Just like Don Carlos Zaginza, he couldn't say certain things. But he started telling it like it was, and the Jesuits kicked them out. Remember, you are Guinean, you are Andes, you are Indian, you are Indios, and I am out of here. If y'all have any questions, y'all know how to find me, AlanDoodooBrown@gmail.com. Or you can just hit up Cobb. Cobb, I see you. I'm sorry I couldn't let people on in the chat and ask any questions you have any. I'm sorry I didn't see it, but I wanted to put it out there. I got tired. I'm tired, and I've had it. So I'm telling you, I'm going to tell you right now, Holiday, you may want to go and check with some people that you say you're not listening to. Now, put your name out there. Shout out to Holiday Inn Express. When you sleep at Holiday Inn Express, you know you had a good night's sleep. Bye, Holiday. I'm off. There's Cotton picking Mike. Good night, everybody.